All right, let's see what kind of trouble we can get up to. I'm going to try and work this pile down here a little bit and see if we can't reduce this pile. So I've also got this pile of stuff that I need to work on too. That's a lot of oak and a lot of walnut, a lot of figured maple that I need to get to working on. Some of that figured maple though, I'm going to have to wait till I can use my chainsaws again. You know, I might just grab this kind of weathered and beat up looking piece of walnut and take that in. All right, so this bark is pretty gnarly. It's not going to stay on, so it's not worth trying to keep. See if I can knock some of it off. Hey, what's up, friends? Ray with Talking Tin Works. How y'all doing? In hindsight, this bark was pretty tough and probably would have stayed on, and I could have got a nice live edge out of it. But it is what it is, and when you start something, you're stuck with it. So, yeah, I took this bark off for the most part, and then took it to the bandsaw and cut out a blank. This right here is one of my favorite ways for mounting blanks nowadays, especially in the live edge orientation where you've got a contour and it doesn't really fit as well onto a woodworm screw without rocking and vibrating. So what that is that's a 2 1/8 inch Forstner bit to fit into my 2-inch shark jaws and an expansion mortise. I know it looks kind of funny having 2-inch shark jaws on a VM120, but I don't have a VM100, so that's what I have. That's what I work with. It works good. Can you guys hear that twang on that gouge? This is an interesting puzzle to crack, this Stuart Batty 15V gouge. I keep practicing with it and trying to get better with it. It's not like a standard gouge. It's hard to explain, but it cuts different and it acts different, behaves different. It really kind of, if you don't have bevel support, it really lets you know. It wanders around a lot until you actually have a groove and a bevel for you to fit in. So I had played with the ideas of rounding a corner, and then I just decided to use these peeling cuts using the wing to level out the bottom, get things kind of trued up. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll cut grooves kind of with the nose and then come back and peel with the wing. It just sounds brittle. It sounds brittle at the grinder too when you're sharpening it. It's an interesting tool. I can say that much for it. A lot of times on these larger bowls, I really don't bother with the step on small bowls, but on large bowls, to get things bulk material removed, I will do kind of a terrace where I'll just cut steps with left-handed push cuts, so I'm out of the line of fire and I'm removing a lot of material, and I will just cut a terrace and then I'll smooth it out with kind of like a draw cut across it. This blank is kind of unique in that it's mostly sapwood compared to the heartwood. Okay, so now here's kind of like that draw cut across the terrace like I was telling you about. I'm kind of all over with my techniques. I was never taught by any one person, and I just pick things up as I go, and it kind of seems to work pretty well. I do like to start with the left-handed push cuts while I'm testing the blank condition. You never know how many splits and cracks you have in it until you remove that first layer, and also how well you have it mounted up in your mounting solution, whether it's between centers, woodworm screw, or like I have a mortise like that. But now that I've removed a bunch of material, I know the mounting solution is safe, the blank is safe, and so I go ahead and remove the tailstock and start working the bottom and getting the right shape. I try to keep the tailstock on as long as I can, but a lot of times lately I've been playing with 40-40 type grinding and using push cuts, and you cannot have the tailstock engaged when you go to doing your push cuts, at least for the bottom contour of the bowl. And so right now I am shaping a tenon for my large shark jaws. I believe they're about a 5-inch. I don't know the exact size. I know they're a little bit over 5 inches diameter. They're a nice, good size jaw for a decent sized base of bull. I start with the gouge and then I clean up with the spindle gouge because it can really get in there tight. And I like to make sure I have a razor sharp corner down where the tenon meets the shoulder of the bull. And I make it a habit, if I have a mounting like this where I can pull the tailstock away, to test the fit of my tenon. And I drop the ball and cut it too tight. So, you just mark another tenon and cut it again for the next size down, which would be 4-inch jaws. So, but if I would have skipped that step and contoured and profiled the bull for that tenon, did all the work, got a nice finished profile, and then I couldn't have used my tenon, all that work would have been wasted. And I would have had to remove and reprofile the bull for the new tenon that I'm cutting now. So if you have the option and the ability to test fit your tenon, I go ahead and do it. See, like right here, I'm having to remove that shoulder and fixing the curve because with that tenon removed, the original tenon, it just doesn't look right. And you can tell the second you look at it, whether it looks right or not. So I always try to test if at all possible. And here we are again. I did the bulk removal with the bowl gouge and then get in there tight with the spindle gouge to make sure that corner where the two faces meet is a little bit concave and razor sharp. There's no ridges or bumps down in there. I don't even want to be able to fit a dollar bill on the shoulder of the jaws into the shoulder of the bull. I want it tight. So those are 4-inch power grip jaws from Technitool Nova on a Supernova 2. They're a good design. They're really similar to a shark jaw where they have a dovetail, and then the extra length is with serrations for gripping, like a big spigot for doing a large vase or a hollow form. Now here's what I mean where you have to have the tailstock removed. I get in tight against the tenon and then start my push cuts out. So at this angle here, I would be into the tailstock. Doing push cuts is not easy. A lot of people will have problems with them your first go around. It's just one of those techniques that takes practice and multiple repetitions. But once you get it down, you'll be very satisfied with the cut. The cut is clean and takes very little cleanup, if any at all. There's like when you get into the softer woods like sassafras and pine, I haven't turned poplar yet, but I'm sure that's the case too, or like punky spalted maples, a shear scrape oftentimes will not clean up that surface and you have to use a slice, which is what the push cut is doing. So I try and really practice and get better at push cutting because it just leaves such a easily sandable surface. Sorry friends, because I hate sanding. I want and only start finishing or sanding my bowl at 120. If I can't touch it with 120, I go back and take another finishing cut. I would like to start at 180. That's not always the case. So, but I have to start at 120 because sanding is the worst process of woodworking for me, and I do everything I can to avoid it. But look at that, man. Isn't that a stunning piece? It's the opposite of most walnut work, where it's almost nearly all sapwood with a little bit of heartwood down at the base to let you know that you're actually looking at walnut. So I use a little bit of shear scraping with a shear scraper, Tommy's refiner basically, and to clean up a little bit of the ridges and the unevenness. The finish off the cut didn't need cleaning up, but maybe a little bump here, a little unevenness here where my push cut wasn't perfect. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm more cleaning up tool marks than tear out. Another thing of note is always sharpen your gouge right prior to your final pass so that you get the cleanest surface possible and you have the least resistance cutting through the wood. That will give you less ridges or bumps working across the bottom if your gouge is razor sharp and just glides across the bottom. I cleaned up the center of the bowl is hard to shear scrape sometimes. So a lot of times I'll clean it up with a negative rake, because it's kind of hard to get that 45-degree angle at the center of the bowl because you're cutting way above center usually. And then I just sanded this bowl as normal. I used a scrap piece of junk wood or sandpaper to kind of dry it up, and I sacrificed an old piece of sandpaper to heat up the wood and dry it, and then just continued sanding like normal. So there you can see I got most of the bark off. When you saw me bring the blank up, there was a lot of bark towards the sides of the edges, but that was all cut off with the bandsaw. Lately, and if I know the bark's going to come off, I just try and remove it, because I'm tired of getting hit by big 4 or 5 inch square chunks of bark on like my wrist. That's painful. So if I don't want the bark, I get rid of it nowadays. And that's just one of those steps that you acquire or you prefer the further you go along. I'm using a little 3/8 spindle gouge as a depth guide to drill a pilot hole to establish the bottom depth of the hole. And I'm back at that Stuart Batty gouge. It really cuts sharp. It is a sharp tool. Getting the angles is a little bit different than what I'm used to. And you see me bobbing around in here, and what happened was I ground the tool a little bit off. So there's kind of like one of those bird's peaks kind of by the nose, and that's making me kind of grab the existing groove. So here after a cut or two, I go and sharpen and get rid of that peak, and you'll see me have better results. Right here I'm looking at the gouge and found what was wrong. Like they say, when in doubt, sharpen. A sharp tool is going to cut better, and it's just going to perform better, and you're going to enjoy the act of turning so much more. If you're constantly fighting and struggling with a dull tool and having to force the cut, it's not enjoyable. You're getting the job done, but it's not smooth and enjoyable. Like this is enjoyable. I often show a lot of times the full hollowing of the bowl, because that's the movement and the cuts that I enjoy the most. It's just fun to do, and I find it fun to watch, just the shavings flying back at the camera and the material removing and the shape of the bowl transforming right there in front of your eyes. I think it's a really cool aspect of turning. Right here, it's kind of cool to see it go from chips to ribbons, where I'm going from live edge and uneven air cuts down into solid wood. It's a cool transition of the material being removed. Another thing with these larger bowls, this one was up probably over 15-16 inches diameter overall, is I don't try and hollow it all to final depth in one pass. I'd rather remove a third of the bowl all the way across, come back towards the center, work out again, remove another third, and then remove more, instead of trying to find the bottom and you're really overhanging and you're at unoptimal angles, especially if you use a 40-40 or a 40 degrees nose angle like I can, because when I'm at the center of the bowl, I don't have bevel support. I'm kind of just jamming the tool in there and it's cutting, but it's not cutting with bevel support, so it's kind of grabby. You can get catches that way, and it's not a clean cut. So like right here is unsupported, and you can see how jerky, and it's not clean, it's not efficient, but it's removing material. Well, there it is. Finally, a little peek at the heartwood down there in the middle. This was a really cool piece, man. I mean, the outcome of it, I was super happy with, but I had something kind of mess up in the drying process, and I wasn't able to keep the contrasting sapwood and darkwood heartwood like I wanted to. I had to modify the design change. But this is why I love filming what I do, is because I can keep this and return to it, you know, tell people, look, man, this is what walnut can look like. But I'm not exactly sure what had happened, but I stored the bowl next to a white oak bowl that I ebonized with iron acetate, and I laid them in top of each other. Now, I don't know if the ebonizing solution leached into the other bowl or not, or if the fumes giving off, because you can really smell the vinegar. If not, because I've kept white sapwood bowls before that were live edge, because I like it's a thing I like to play with walnut because it's so contrasting, and I've kept it before, but this bowl did not keep. So I'm wondering if it was in fact able to leach. Okay, so now this is a bottom feeding bowl gouge, and I'm just kind of hogging the material out right here. I'm not finessing it. And then for whatever reason, I believe the gouge was dull and I didn't want to go sharpen, so I just grabbed my scraper to finish the bottom. I'm not one that's set in stone with one technique or one way of doing things one way or the other. I am just as comfortable with a traditional scraper as I am with a bowl gouge, as I am with a negative rake scraper, to certain degrees. When I get out towards a thin rim and edge of a bowl, I prefer a negative rake over a traditional scraper, rather than trying to get a shear cut and angle the scraper out at the rim, especially on a live edge where you've got air and wood. You could call it a cop out or whatever you want, but I feel safer and am more in control with a negative rake. But down at the bottom of the bowl, yeah, man, I'll hog material with a traditional scraper all day long. You know, turning is about your enjoyment and your work. I do what works for you, do what's easy for you, do what gets the best results. If it means using 5 or 6 different tools to finish a bowl, do it. If you're more comfortable with a 55-degree swept-back bowl gouge and you do the entire bowl with that one gouge, do it. Whatever is your preference and what you become comfortable with, stick with it and stick to your preference, you know? It's about you and your enjoyment and your passion for this hobby or this craft. And so right there, what I did was I switched out tool rests so that I could get more support and get a cleaner cut. You know, if you have tools at your disposal, use them. If you don't, well, do the best with what you have. But I'm not in such a hurry. I'm not a production turner where I will swap out tools and accessories that will benefit me in the long run because I want a good finished piece. Okay, now normally I don't fix the rim on a natural edge like that, but since I kind of went wild with a hatchet, I have to fix up this rim. So I'm just I did it with a hard backer at first, and then I went to a softer foam backing and just kind of contoured and rounded over the edge of the rim so it has a nice smooth profile.
Ah, that ain't gonna work.
And then here I am finishing the bowl with some walnut oil. And what I'm doing here is I'm doing it on the lathe so that I can burnish in the oil with the paper towel so it gets a head start in the polymerization process and gets a nice shell. This was turned green or semi-green. You saw the condition of the log laying out there. So I don't know, it was probably down around 15.
We might have to come back and retouch up the sanding a little bit after it dries.
So I just like to get some oil in there and I like to burnish it in so it starts its polymerizing process. Just a kickstart with some heat. And as we're wrapping this video up, I would like to say thanks for hanging out with me and sticking around. If you could, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. I've got tons of wood turning content out there. I'm starting to do shorts and long form content to kind of diversify the channel and get the content out there. Your likes, comments, and if you share the video to other social medias really helps me with the algorithm. YouTube was on easy mode there for a while and I was getting a lot of views, and now they took easy mode for small channels away and I'm back down again. So it's a constant struggle with YouTube, but I'm still having fun and putting out content for you guys. So I can't thank y'all enough for it. We hit that 1,000 subscriber mark, which was super fun, super happy for all of us involved, and I want to keep going. I don't ever want to stop. While I'm turning, I might as well film it and put it out for you guys. Isn't that a cool, beautiful piece? I wish it would have stayed like that.
All right, so I did this piece and it looks like, I don't know if this happened because I had it in with my oak platter that had the ebonizing fluid or not, but this is kind of leaching out and darkening. So I've never ebonized walnut with the iron acetate or oxide or whatever it is, but so I figured we'd do it right now. Oh. And see how this reacts and does. In a real-time fashion. I heard that walnut has a good reaction to it. So maybe we can get a more even finish on it.
Stinks.
She doesn't like the smell of it. Look at all that rust. Oops.
It's all went on the ground. It's already darkening.
Yeah. That might take a couple of coats. All right, it's starting to work pretty good. This is the initial coat. I might let it dry a little bit longer and add a couple of more coats, probably sand the grain with 320 in between, just a little bit of hand sanding. Each coat's probably going to raise the grain just a little bit. So it's making progress.
All right, now we're going to do a little bit of still gallery here for the bowl, the finished product. I went ahead and finished it with some Odie's oil to give it a nice warm luster and a non-gloss, kind of just warm rustic look to the piece. Thanks, friends. Have a good one.